Welcome to the broadcast. You're watching KTN Prime. I'm Jesse Rogers. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Meresha Owiti. Let's start with that developing story on Nairobi. Governor Johnson Sakaja and police have surrounded county offices within the Central Business District with the aim of arresting the embattled governor. The officers are seeking to implement a Senate order issued to the Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, of presenting Governor Sakaja to the committee to answer some audit queries. It has been a hide-and-seek game as the officers sought to get hold of Sakaja. Our reporter, Jeff Kirui, joins us live from the Central Business District with the very latest on this push and pull. Jeff Kirui, good evening. A little bit earlier on, we saw your update on how police officers had surrounded the offices. What's the latest? Have they been able to get a hold of Governor Sakaja? And what next? Will he be presented to Senate, or is this an issue that will require the corridors of justice?
Well, very good evening, Jesse. Indeed, right now we are outside the office of the governor, that is the county hall here in Nairobi, and the governor, Johnson Arthur Sakaja, is a man on the run. National Police Service officers are actually on a manhunt looking for the governor of Nairobi over what they termed as contempt of parliament. This is after he failed to appear before the County Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, chaired by Homa Bay Senator Moses Kajwang. He has been invited 4 times and summoned once, but he has failed to appear in all instances. And on Wednesday last week, after failing to appear the 4th time, the Senate Public Accounts Committee directed the Inspector General of Police, Douglas Kanja, to produce him today in Senate or before the senators. And today, when he failed to appear, the County Public Accounts Committee directed that, or rather invited Douglas Kanja to appear before it to explain to the committee the circumstances under which the National Police Service Commission failed to trace, arrest and produce Johnson Sakaja before the committee. And perhaps that is what informed what we witnessed today from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m., where officers from the National Police Service and the DCI actually surrounded his office. But we are informed that he managed to slip away the dragnet, from the dragnet of the police. But what we understand is that the police are also keen to make sure that he is arrested and produced tomorrow before the Senate. We will wait to see if exactly the senator or the governor of Nairobi will take himself and produce himself before the senators, or appear before the parliament's police before he appears before the Senate committee. But what is the genesis of all this, Jesse? Remember, on February 9th, the Council of Governors, led by the COG Chair Ahmed Abdullahi, and the Vice Chairperson, Tharaka Nithi Governor Mudhomi Njuki, announced the resolution of the Council of Governors that they will no longer be appearing before the County Public Accounts Committee of the Senate over what they termed as intimidation and extortion by a section of members of that committee. And on Tuesday last week, Governor Johnson Sakaja, while appearing before the Senate Committee on Lands and Environment, made it clear that he will not appear before the County Public Accounts Committee, or CPAC. That is what perhaps informed the decision of the CPAC committee to issue summons and also direct the IG of police, Douglas Kanja, to produce him before the committee. And he was also fined 500,000 shillings, which we understand he has managed to pay. But today, the regional police commander, Isa Mahamud, as well as the police spokesperson, Mushiri Nyaga, made it clear that they are going to look for him and arrest him. And it's not just Johnson Sakaja who is being sought. Also, the governor for Samburu, Latile Lelit, who is also being sought for snubbing Senate summons. And of course, we expect that by tomorrow, we will, of course, hear from the police officers what will be the way forward, whether it's going to end in the corridors of justice or it's going to end before the Senate of Kenya. But right now, let's listen into what the regional police commander, Isa Mahmood, and the spokesperson of the police, Nyaga Mushiri, had to say.
Yeah. So it's not just Nairobi governor, it also includes Samburu governor as well.
So are officers in Samburu,
Yeah.
or wherever the governor of Samburu is right
Yes.
now,
Yeah.
also effecting a similar arrest?
Absolutely. It's not just here in Nairobi, it also includes Nairobi and anywhere within Kenya where these two gentlemen can be found. It's our mandate, it's the mandate of the National Police Service to ensure that they are brought before Senate. For the Inspector General, we are his workers, we are his staff. So on behalf of the Inspector General, we have to carry out these instructions because the Inspector General has to go again back to Senate and explain himself. That is under the Constitution. So again, we are saying it's not just Nairobi governor, it's also Samburu governor. And this must be done. The rule of law must be seen to prevail. And no one is above the law. Yeah.
What if this operation fails today? Is not...
We are not talking about failure. We are not talking about failure. We have to do what we must and ensure that these two gentlemen are presented before Senate. And as we talk about that, we are also reminding them they hold very high offices wherever they are. So it's not a question of cat and mouse chase. They are also duty bound as individuals and people holding high positional levels to actually do the honorable thing and present themselves before Senate.
So, for matter of fact, verification is that the two operations must occur today, and the presentation happens tomorrow, so that tomorrow we can follow up with the questions.
Absolutely. There are no two ways about it. And like we've said, wherever they are, if they are watching this, if of course they have their Midas, the honorable thing to do is to present themselves before Senate.
If these two governors are not presented,
About that. No, I'm still confusing you, and it is because I don't want to speak matters of operation. Let's just leave it at that. We'll take him to court, to the Senate. That is our mandate, and we'll do it without any fear or favor. Thank you.
perhaps the police spokes, Bwana Mushiri,
Yes.
you could tell us how today you are coming for him this evening. When the instruction this evening is that it is the Inspector General who should be presented before the Senate.
You see, it's the governor who has failed to go, not the Inspector General. Where the Inspector General comes in is that he comes in because he was supposed to execute the warrant. And who is supposed to execute the warrant? It is me and all these officers you can see here. And that's what we are doing. So if he has failed to go today there, we'll go for him. That's the only thing. There's no other shortcut. Because the next step is the Inspector General will be in the dock to answer. Because the status of the Senate is same as the High Court. You see? So they can issue warrant for the Inspector General or any other public officer or any person in this country. So that is okay. So, but before our Inspector General is arrested, we have to execute it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm here and I'll go look for him. We are not relenting. We are going to look for him. If he doesn't present himself tomorrow morning, we'll see, maybe we'll get him tonight. I don't want to disclose any operational matters. Those are operational matters. Let's keep it at that. So we'll do the next step.
There is the time limit. There is the aspect that you're...
Well, there you have it. Issa Mahmood, the Nairobi Regional Police Commander, and a little bit earlier on, Michael Mushiri, the police spokesperson, speaking about that developing story where Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja is currently being sought by authorities on allegations of contempt of parliament. We've seen a manhunt that has been launched following that Senate directive. Remember, this is due to snubbing the County Public Accounts Committee in the Senate, the summons, and he's not the only governor on the spot. The Samburu governor, Lati Lelelit, is equally being sought out by police to ensure that they appear before the Senate CPAC committee. This seems to be the modus operandi moving on from now when governors snub summons to ensure they are actually held accountable. We'll keep you updated in case of any developments in regards to that police dragnet. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines right now. The Controller of Budget, Margaret Nyakango, is raising concern over the country's vulnerability of external debt profile amid fears of defaulting. Nyakango says that a significant portion of external debt, approximately 3.32 trillion shillings, falls due within 1 year, indicating substantial near-term repayment pressure. She said that although 1.41 trillion shillings is long-term, the skew towards short-term maturities exposes the government to refinancing and rollover risks. This report was prepared by Noel Nabiswa and voiced by Ian Nzive. Listen in.
The Controller of Budget appeared before the National Assembly Committee on Public Debt and Privatization, chaired by Balambala MP Abdi Shurie, to discuss the Consolidated Fund Service expenditure for the financial year 2025 to 2026. Nyakango said that the debt obligations will significantly constrain physical space and subsequently limit the government's ability to finance development and social programs.
Are we borrowing to pay external debt? Yes, yes, and yes. That is what we are doing. We borrow domestically to pay externally and also to support the budget. So this again is happening, and I may not say how many times, but we do this all the time.
According to Nyakango, the probability of government defaulting on its debt obligations is worsened by fiscal deficits, which has increased the public debt. She observed that fiscal deficits have become a moving target due to over-projected revenue collection that has not yet been met.
Fiscal consolidation, we are supposed to be increasing revenue, reducing expenditure. But we can't reduce expenditure when budgets are rejected and then they come in through the back door as Article 223 during supplementary. So everything that was rejected comes back and more. Not just what was rejected, but with more. They come with more bags.
According to the Control of Budgets, the review of the CFS confirms that the public debt remains elevated, with the stock standing at 12.29 trillion shillings as of December 2025, equivalent to 67.8% of gross domestic product. This level, she said, is significantly above the statutory debt anchor of 55% of GDP and continues to exert substantial pressure on public finances.
The sustainability of public debt, therefore, will ultimately depend on credible fiscal consolidation, the strengthened domestic revenue mobilization, rationalization of recurrent expenditure, and prioritization of high-impact development spending.
She made the remarks against the backdrop of a recent Auditor General Nancy Gathungu report showing that the government paid 6.6 billion shillings as commitment fees paid between financial year 2020-2021 to 2023-2024 on undrawn loans procured from foreign lenders to finance capital projects which question fiscal discipline.
Moving on, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, is targeting to register 6.5 million new voters in a mass registration exercise that kicked off today across the country. In several regions, leaders urged young people and eligible citizens to turn out in large numbers and register. However, challenges such as low turnout and delays in the issuance of national identity cards have also been reported, as Violet Auma now details.
The IEBC has officially launched a nationwide mass voter registration exercise aiming to enlist up to 6.5 million new voters ahead of the 2027 general election.
We are targeting to mobilize about 6.5 million new voters by the time we go to the elections.
In Kwale County, the IEBC chairperson, Erastus Ethacon, expressed concerns over the low turnout, noting that only a small number of residents have registered.
Since the resumption of this exercise, we have only registered 2,547 voters from Kwale. So we are not doing very well.
Across the coast region, leaders are targeting to register 2.5 million voters in a bid to boost the region's influence in national politics.
Every Kenyan who is eligible, especially the youth who make up 75% of our population, to register.
Wale ambao wanagombea viti vya urais, nina imani uwe wanaangalia ni wapi tuweke pressure kuboresha zaidi. Takwimu hapa Pwani zinaonyesha ya kwamba tuko na potential ya kuweza kuwa na kura zaidi ya 2.5 million.
In Kakamega County, the IEBC is targeting to register 240,000 new voters through a joint effort with youth groups.
Nico Kadi, some of the officials are here. They are the people we are using. They are going to the ground. Our mashinani wanatuletea wapigaji kura.
Before you type one term ama two term kwa mtandao, make sure uko na kadi ili uweze kudetermine kama itakuwa two term ama one term.
Elsewhere in Ruiru, stakeholders called the IEBC to increase personnel and resources to match the area's growing population. At least 11 new polling stations have already been added.
But what we'd like to call upon IEBC is to pull up and to try and add more polling stations and to add more staff equally, because the target that they've given of 20,000 will soon be surpassed.
Meanwhile, in Mombasa, Kirinyaga, and Nyeri counties, young people who turned up are encouraging their peers to register.
We want to elect leaders wenye wako na visions, wenye wako na maendeleo, wenye wataleta maendeleo.
Biggest call to the youth right now is showing up and taking the voters card. My next biggest call to the youth is turning up as alternative leadership.
However, in Taita Taveta County, some youth have raised concerns over delays in the issuance of the national identity cards.
Lakini process ya kuchukua ID bado iko slow. Na kwa sababu hiyo inazuia mambo ya voter registration.
Kenya had approximately 22.1 million registered voters during the 2022 general election. If the IEBC realizes its objective, then Kenya could have about 25 million voters in 2027. Violet Auma, KTN.
Now, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has defended the cooperation agreement between the national government and the Nairobi County government. This is despite claims that have emerged suggesting the deal is a scheme by the national government to take over county functions gradually, similar to what happened under the Nairobi Metropolitan Services during the administration of former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Mudavadi, who appeared before the Senate Committee on Devolution, dismissed the allegations, even as senators pressed him to clearly outline the details of the agreement between the two levels of government.
About a month after President William Ruto and Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja signed a cooperation agreement granting the national government authority to carry out some functions that were previously handled by Nairobi County, questions continue to emerge, with senators raising concerns over the arrangement.
So if you're funding, if you're coordinating, and if you're implementing, then you have already taken all the functions of that county government. Because operation, you have the operational control, and control means exercise of that function.
We are fully in support of devolution. This is not a takeover. The implementation committee, which is the most critical, is chaired by the county government. The county assemblies must have oversight, and this particular framework agreement was also debated by the county assembly, and eventually they gave it approval.
Looks like we have merged the two cabinets and we have asked them to run Nairobi City County. That will be a backdoor way of implementing 187, even though you are saying the agreement is under 189.
The implementation of the agreement between the national government and the Nairobi County has also come under sharp criticism, with some senators arguing that it may have violated the constitution, particularly the provision that requires public participation before such an agreement is effected.
The public participation process was not properly followed. It was being done post facto. It was being done after the signing of the agreement. It even had a clause saying that if anything new comes out of public participation, it will be put in. And Dana Mayo, you'll agree that is untidy.
Under the agreement, the national government will provide 80 billion shillings to facilitate the execution of agreed functions, which include solid waste management, street lighting in Nairobi, and the improvement of sewerage systems.
We have been living in past glory and not realizing that we need to invest in our capital city. Therefore, we need to have a clear and a strategy that can help us start correcting the situation.
Martin Opio, KTN.
Let's talk politics. The united opposition is now warning of an imminent collapse of the Social Health Authority over the next 6 months. The leaders under the united opposition, led by former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, argue that Kenya Kwanza administration has been unable to offer Kenyans universal health care, but instead, a few people continue to benefit from the sharp billions which cannot be accounted for. Our senior political affairs reporter, Chris Thyro, with the details.
Politicians affiliated to the alternative government team started their 4-day campaign tour for Ukambani region, pitching tent in Makueni County. During the rally, the opposition leaders accused the Kenya Kwanza administration of failing to deliver healthcare services to Kenyans and that SHA is a failed system.
Sasa katika ile consortium ambaye ililete biashara ya 104 billion, kampuni inaitwa Convergence Network Solutions iko na 17.89%. Hiyo kampuni ni ya waziri Aden Duale, ndio mwizi mkuu katika Jamhuri ya Kenya.
Tafadhali tuchukue kadi tupige kura, kwa sababu tunaweza kutaka yale tunataka, lakini tusipochukua kadi hatuwezi kufaulu kutoa uongozi huu.
Kwa tayari kupokea mvua. Hiyo mvua lazima tuchukue kura. Wangapi atachukua kura sasa? Kwa wingi, kwa wingi, kwa wingi. Muko kadi? Muko kadi? Wangapi wako kadi?
According to the politicians, SHA owes hospitals over 90 billion shillings, urging private and faith-based healthcare facilities to demand upfront payments before offering services.
Sasa hii citizen Kasongo owns 80%. Wameiba 6.3 billion, imetolewa cash. Sasa mimi nataka kumwambia wewe William Ruto, leo hii nikiwa hapa, mimi nataka kuambia toa anga yoyote ambayo inalipishwa kwa watu kuchukua death certificate, ndio tuondoe death voters na vijana wakuja waliplaza hao.
The politicians also asked President William Ruto to desist from meddling with affairs of their families.
Governor left a will that was disputed according to the succession laws of Kenya. Amemwambia wachana na familia ya Wamalwa. Wamalwa dai tested case iko kotini distributing his estate. Wewe Ruto ni nani kuingia familia za watu? Aende asiende?
Wakati Gachagua alikuwa analipa pesa ya kura yake, wakiomba kura, hadi alisahau sasa. Kama si Gachagua, Ruto angekuwa rais. Harambee!
Hata wakuje na waganga hawezi shinda. Sikisi tumefunga, Central tumefunga, Ukambani tumefunga, Coast tumefunga, watapitia wapi?
The team continues to camp in Ukambani region with plans to visit Machakos and Kitui counties on Wednesday and Thursday. Chris Thyro, KTN.
Let's take our fast break now. When we come back, school's set to close in a few days' time, but the government is yet to disburse. Welcome back to KTN Prime. Thank you for staying with us. Let's continue informing you. Now, cracks within Jubilee Party seem to be getting deeper after the party, through its Secretary General, dismissed the Jubilee Party Aspirants Forum, an initiative of former Nyeri Town Member of Parliament Ngunjiri Wambogo. Ngunjiri has protested the move by the party and now claims that it's a plot to compromise space for the Gachagua-led DCP. Clement Masombo has that story.
A revelation made by top leadership in the Jubilee party while on their tour to open party offices in Nyeri County has now exposed the deepening cracks within the party, with a section of members accusing leaders of not addressing their concerns on party's political directions and alliances ahead of the 2027 general election. While addressing a rally in Nyeri town, Jubilee deputy leader Fred Matiang'i hinted at a possible collaboration with the Gachagua-led party DCP, a move that is now dividing the party's file and rank.
Vile mnajua Jubilee, sisi tumeungana na wale wengine katika upinzani. Tuko katika United Opposition. Na hapo United Opposition, tuko pamoja na DCP na Mheshimiwa Rigathi Gachagua.
Na sisi kama Jubilee, kama wale wengine, presidential candidate wetu ni Fred Okengo Matiang'i. Na atakaa na wale wengine watupatie mtu mmoja ili tuweze kutoa kamutu kanaitwa Kasongo.
Also at the center of the debate is the Jubilee Party Aspirants Forum, an initiative of former Nyeri Town Member of Parliament Ngunjiri Wambogo, which the party Secretary General Ole Kenta has dismissed, terming it an unauthorized outfit. The move has drawn sharp criticism from the former legislator, arguing that such a move could suppress democracy.
A forum for party aspirants by party aspirants cannot be a crime. Nothing can be done for us without us. Since when did it become an offense for Jubilee members and aspiring leaders to meet and discuss their future? Since when did political consultation become rebellion? Since when did mobilization become misconduct? And since when did the party become so fragile that it fears a room full of its own members? Nobody has claimed that the Aspirants Forum replaces official registration of constitutional party processes. That is a dishonest and convenient distortion. The truth is simple. Members have a right to organize. Aspirants have a right to engage. And no office holder has the moral or political authority to criminalize member participation simply because they cannot control it.
Wambogo further claims that the move could be a calculated political strategy intending to bring on board DCP party leader Rigathi Gachagua.
It was very, very embarrassing for me to mobilize members of the Jubilee party to Nyeri without any support of the party. And then the party leadership comes to talk about a competing candidate in our meeting. You know, so at a certain point you're left wondering, so are we actually competing with that person? Because when you call for a meeting and you have 2,000 people who are members of Jubilee who have come, and then the leadership, the deputy party leaders actually, including the presidential candidate, starts telling these people, by the way, we are also working with so-and-so. Who has competitors here?
Wambogo is now calling on the party leadership to allow open engagement among members, warning that resistance to grassroots initiatives could weaken the party's structures. Clement Masombo, KTN.
Now, 3 days to the end of the first term, schools are still grappling with incomplete capitation, underscoring a familiar cycle of funding shortfalls. Senior schools have received just 6,500 shillings of the expected 11,000 shillings per learner, exposing a widening gap that continues to strain operations and cast doubt on the reliability of government disbursement systems. Listen in.
And the cycle repeats itself as the school term draws to a close in just 3 days, with funding concerns persisting. Schools are yet to receive full capitation, with senior schools said to have received only 6,500 of the expected 11,000 shillings per annum.
This term one, we are supposed to get 50% of the capitation, which should have been 11,122. But what was sent to schools, what the schools got in the accounts is 6,577 per student.
School capitation is released in 3 structured phases: 50% in first term, 30% in second term, and 20% in third term. However, delays and inconsistencies continue to disrupt the schedule, complicating planning and delay school operations.
The solutions are being provided.
Last term laid bare the severity of the funding crisis, with many schools receiving barely half the required capitation, while others got nothing at all, even as the government defended the delays, citing a term-long verification exercise aimed at streamlining data and addressing systematic inefficiencies in the funding allocation. School heads now warn that mounting operational costs continue to pile up, worsening the financial pressure.
This money can even be sent even to schools today because the bills are unpaid, salaries are unpaid, and this are always expected for schools that rely purely on this capitation.
The ministry insisted that full capitation will follow once verification report is complete, anchored on the accurate learner data. However, the reality on the ground sharply contrasts these assurances as schools continue to grapple with delay and partial disbursement, exposing persistent flaws within the system. And Musungu, KTN, Nairobi.
Moving on, human rights defenders are raising concern over transparency in the ongoing protest victims' compensation process by the Kenya National Human Rights Commission. They're poking holes into the 60-day timeline and the independence of the Rights Commission. Speaking to the media in Nairobi earlier today, the rights activists asked the KNCHR to collaborate with them and prioritize claims from recent incidents. Winfrey Owino reports.
The government's push to compensate protest victims continues to hit more roadblocks, even as grieving families mourn their dead. And as the process gets underway, many families are still searching for their missing kin.
Wanasema wanataka wale waliuliwa ama wale walishutiwa na huyo mwenye alimiss na alikuwa kwa that scene. Kutoka hiyo wakati mimi naishi kutafuta mtoto wangu, sijaimuona, nimeenda city mortuary, nimeenda everywhere.
Sisi hatuna vita na serikali. Sisi tunataka tu haki, tunataka compensation.
In a media briefing, human rights defenders raised concerns over the 60-day timeline issued to families of the victims, saying it is not enough to capture all victims' details accurately. They also propose doubling the budget.
Hatutaki process ambayo inafanywa kwa haraka, ambayo itakuwa na makosa hapa na pale kwa sababu imeharakishwa.
Commission must prioritize claims arising from the most recent incidents, particularly those linked to the Gen Z protests in 2024 and 2025, and thereafter work backwards.
While claiming external interference with the commission, the activists are pushing for involvement in the process, openness on required data, prioritization of recent incidents, and regular updates on the process.
The Commission must clearly outline and publicize all designated points of data submission across the country.
To enter a process of data collection without even giving clarity on what type of injuries, victims, cases are being considered makes it even more difficult for families to find the little bit of resource to know how to approach and to be involved.
The push and pull between the activists and the Human Rights Commission began on Monday morning after the Commission cancelled a planned meeting with the groups as well as families of protest victims.
But we have our own internal sources where we got information that the meeting was not going to happen the way we had envisaged it. There were other plans to interrupt the registrations.
The compensation process began in August 2025, but was stalled by a court process that ended in December 2025. The Commission was given the green light to handle the compensation process with a timeline issued by the Head of Public Service via Gazette notice on January 5th, 2026. Families have up to April 3rd to submit details of their kin to the Commission, after which the Commission will issue a report on the compensation framework. Winfrey Owino, KTN, Nairobi.
Well, thanks, Winfrey Owino, for that update. Let's take you through what Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard, is leading with tomorrow. The headline, as you'll shortly see on your screens, is all to do with the embattled Governor Johnson Sakaja. You can run, but, well, you definitely can't hide. Under siege, Governor Sakaja has gone into hiding after ignoring multiple Senate summons over Nairobi County finances. Police staked out City Hall yesterday to enforce his arrest, while 25 other governors have also flouted calls to account. With billions in unverified spending and fines brushed aside, senators are adopting audit reports without input from the defiant county chiefs. Will Sakaja's looming arrest force the other governors to toe the line? That's the big question, even as we've quoted the Nairobi County Police boss Issa Mohamud, who says, and I quote, "The Senate has powers to direct Sakaja be brought before it. Accordingly, the senators summoned the governor of Nairobi, but he did not honor the summons. They issued a warrant of arrest through the Inspector General, and we're here to pick him and present him before the Senate." Find out more details on that latest development that seems to be the new modus operandi when it comes to governors snubbing summons by the Senate committees who are looking into audit queries around the county spending. That story plus plenty more in tomorrow's edition of Kenya's Bold newspaper. Do make sure you grab yourself a copy. Ahead in business news.
Our total assets recorded a 24% increase growth.
Family Bank releases its end-of-year financial results. We have the details.
Good evening. Thank you so much for staying with KTN Prime. My name is Kelly Boss, and this is KTN Business Prime. Now, Family Bank has officially entered the Tier 1 conversation with a 2025 financial year performance that mirrors the massive profits seen across Kenya's banking giants. This morning, the bank's CEO, Nancy Njau, announced a profit after tax of 5.4 billion for the 2025 financial year, a 55.4% jump from 3.5 billion in 2024. Now, this performance marks the successful year one of the bank's 5-year strategic plan, fueled by a heavily oversubscribed 8 billion capital raise and a deliberate pivot towards MSME lending and government securities.
Our total assets recorded a 24% increase growth, that is growth from the year 2024. Yes, thank you. You can clap. To 208.6 billion, quite commendable. Our loans and advances to our customers, and this is net loan book, recorded a 14% growth to 105.8 billion. Our profit before tax last year recorded a whole 62% growth to 6.3 billion for the group. Our profit after tax recorded a 55% growth to 5.37 billion.
In the added strategic plan, our total assets grew by 14%. So, hoping 10% within the first year of implementing our new strategic plan.
Now, Kenya is pushing to position itself as a regional investment hub, with the government and private sector leaders calling for decisive action. At the 4th Annual CEO Conclave and Investor Forum, the Principal Secretary for the State Department for Science, Research and Innovation, Professor Shaukat Abdul Razak, emphasized that science and innovation are the non-negotiable engines for economical growth.
Strong partnership between government and private sector is also very critical for sustainable growth, with chambers of commerce and business platforms providing practical bridges between policy and enterprises. The opportunities emerging from this growth strategy can fully be realized if investors pursue long-term partnership that support local production, skills transfer, and job creation. We also have to recognize the power of digital transformation and innovation in driving growth and transformation. Kenya's leadership in digital innovation and fintech is a distinct competitive advantage that has demonstrated the critical role of technology as a driver of efficiency, inclusion, and economic resilience.
Now, the government wants trips made by SACCO boards audited to assess their importance, because there are societies that are taking advantage of members' deposits to enrich themselves. Now, speaking during the Harambee SACCO annual delegates meeting in Nairobi, Cooperatives PS Kiburi Kilemi and Commissioner David Obonyo issued a directive to SACCO leadership nationwide. Citing the ghost of past collapses like Cusco and Metropolitan, the ministry is introducing a radical audit regime. From auditing board travel to incentivizing single-digit interest rates, the government is moving to ensure that the 42.2 billion held by powerhouses like Harambee Sacco remains a shield for members, not a piggy bank for directors.
Why should the member pay for you to go and do desert drive in Dubai? Now, ukikuja wewe ni yule tu, there is no value for the member. Video. We asked, when you are going out, leaders, at the expense of your members, just like I do, just like Commissioner does, tell us where you are going, who is paying for it, and quantify the value that expedition will have on your members.
Avoid target your dividends, interest, and a return to a point that we push the management and the board, some who are not well farmed up, they may decide to massage the books.
Now, the current tax burden is leaning too heavily on very few shoulders. Investors in Kenya are calling on the Kenya Revenue Authority to ensure public awareness on tax obligations and have urged government to expand the tax base by bringing more informal sector players into the system, noting that the current structure overburdens a small number of taxpayers.
We need a government which has a very clear structure of tax policy, not unpredictable tax policy, whereby today the tax is up, tomorrow the tax is down. We want a tax regime which is predictable.
What we'd like, of course, is for the government to support the local companies and not especially have regulations that are not fitting for the community. So the government can look at the whole business channel and encourage even the small businesses.
Well, is it taxing the minority or the MSMEs or taxing the 7,200 people who are wealthy and untaxed? That's a question that I leave to you, but that wraps up KTN Business Prime. KTN Prime continues with Jesse Rogers.